film called Hustlers, which I saw twice opening weekend.
2 more times than I did.
This is insane that you don't see the movies that you're
I mean,
in.
I know what happens.
You know what happens. Okay, well, that's a good point. That's a good point. Well, I've seen it many more times than now for enough for you and for me.
Great.
But, the movie just crossed over $100 million, which is amazing. What does that mean to you that this movie is so successful?
Well, it's funny because my agent emailed me like, oh my God, you guys crossed this number. And then everybody on the chain was like, it's so great. And I was like, cool, what does this mean? Because I don't really think about numbers.
You mean like, what does it mean for me?
No. because you hear other numbers like, oh, the Joker made this much or Avengers made this much. And I'm like, I mean, that's great, but it doesn't sound like what Avengers did. And they're like, no. For a movie this size, especially one that people did not think would be like this huge smash, starring all women of color, pretty much. And so the fact that my team explained to me that it's a big deal. It obviously doesn't have the reach of like an Avengers movie. And so, I'm learning about this stuff as I'm going along. Hustlers is only the second studio movie I've ever done.
Whoa.
The first was Crazy Rich Asians.
Yeah, you have a really good batting average here, to use a sports analogy, because I know you love baseball. I think I felt affected by the fact that it was so successful. I mean, even though I'm clearly not someone who would sort of see myself in any of the roles in the movie, like the actresses are so great. As you said, it's almost all women of color. And the story is just so unusual. It's not about rich people, it's about people struggling to get by, single moms. I really responded to it. Plus it was really sexy. So I thought that was absolutely incredible that it so quickly made $100 million. So congratulations.
Thank you.
We followed the green brick road.
Yep.
So far, so good?
I mean, it's okay.
Get out. I mean, you must be cleaning up. You're new. You're fucking gorgeous. You're Asian. It's like a triple threat.
So what was it like working with Emma Thompson?
What was it like working with Emma Thompson? Well, we were talking about Steve Carell earlier, and I think there's certain performers like Emma or Steve who they really can do everything. They can do comedy, they can do drama. And we shot this movie in 24 days. And so there was no time for rehearsal or anything like that. So I just needed an actor who could do the hard comedy of this role of this late night talk show host, but then also do the drama and her dramatic scenes with no rehearsal at all.
Yeah.
So that's pretty rare, I think. Because almost everyone, you work in TV too, almost everyone can kind of get there if you have hours and hours, you can edit people. But when you really don't have any time, because I know you shot Hustlers really quickly too.
Yeah.
You just need people who've done the work beforehand and just come ready to shoot.
Yeah,
so she's like that.
I mean, I come from a theater world where it's like everyone comes prepared, right? Because the curtain's up and then you can't call for a line.
Right.
Really. But in TV, it's a little different because like you can reset in the middle of a take, be like, oh, I flubbed that line, let me just go again.
Right.
And you just go again, which is its own kind of freedom. But I was wondering, do you find, like with Emma being British and us being American, like American versus British humor, like did it feel like a different type of play or was it?
That's such a good question. When I wrote the role for her, because I have this encyclopedic knowledge of every role she's ever done, but I don't know. I didn't write it with any specific British changes, although when she read the script, there's probably like 5 places in the script where she said, well, this turn of phrase would actually not be this.
Right. But I feel like the comedy is sometimes different in British comedy, like the rhythm of it, the things,
Well, she's definitely, the movie is a real American movie, and she's a British character in a real American movie.
Right,
Like when I was writing it, I thought of movies like those like New York City movies in the 80s and 90s that like Mike Nichols directed.
Right.
And so because she was obviously such a fan of Mike Nichols and had worked with him and loved those kinds of movies, she came in knowing that was kind of the cadence and the tone.
And she just got it.
And she got it because she'd done them so much and was such a fan herself of that kind of filmmaking.
And then she said something to me that I will never forget. She said to me that despite our very different backgrounds, that I reminded her of a younger her.
Me. Isn't that wonderful?
I mean, huge.
So in late night, you kind of are part of this late night comedy writing team that's a sort of a boys club, and you sort of like go in there and like claim your space. I mean, was that taken from life at all, or?
Yeah, I mean, the character is definitely based a lot on the way that I was when I started at The Office.
Right. Which was what percentage would you say of like men to women?
Men to women. I was the only person of color and the only woman in a staff of 7. And so it was a small staff, but you know, it's so funny, that was 2014. I mean, that was 2004, and now that would be absolutely insane. Like you would never have that. So there's been a lot of changes since then, but I did take a lot of the worried feelings I have, because I mean, I don't know if you face this, but a lot of times when you come into a room and you're the only person of color or the only woman, you know, if you're working with a lot of white guys, if they say something dumb or have a bad day, it's not like you're like, well, all white men must be like this, because you have a sense of context. But when I was a writer there and I started, if I had a bad day or said something lame or unfunny, I was like, oh, this is what they think Indian women are like.
Yes.
And you have this, not only are you trying to make it on a show and be funny and get asked back, but then you also have like the mantle of like all Asian women or Indian women or just women are this way. And if I have a bad day, it doesn't feel so great to be a representative. Have you heard
the term rep sweats?
Rep sweats?
Yeah, I think
No,
it was
tell
coined
me.
around the time Fresh Off the Boat came out.
Yes.
Because it's like, you're sweating because you have to rep, but like you're just one story. There's no possible way that you could rep every single person who looks kind of like you, but because you're the only one,
I know
other people might do that, and so you have the rep sweats.
Oh, totally. And people and smart young
well-meaning
people who are of, who are Indian or Pakistani or in your cases like Asian, Chinese, Taiwanese, they must write and say like, that's not what it's like. And there's so much hope and expectation put on you. And if you let them down, and you're going to let somebody down because there's not so many of you.
Completely.
I love that. I'm going to use it all the time.
Because on one hand, it's like, we want you to break stereotype and they're glad when we do things that like they don't see other Asians do on TV. But then at the same time, other people be like, well, they're wearing shoes in the house. All Asians wear shoes in the house. I'm like, well, maybe not all. So it's like, it's a natural emotional reaction I think any group of marginalized people will have when they know that something that they see is going to be representative of them and that the kids in the schoolyard are going to assume that they're like that.
Right.
So naturally you have some anxiety about that. And for me as an actor, I think you can't win them all. And I think if you try, it just waters everything down and then the content isn't as good.
Yeah.
So you just kind of have to be truthful to your character, and hopefully that spurs on more projects so we don't just have the one representative.
Yeah. I think that's a really smart way to go about it.
Did it change? Because you were in the office or the writing room of the office, did it change?
It did. I think the next year we had another woman, and then every year there was like sort of small changes. I think that on shows now, there's so much more of literally financial incentive to hire people of color now that didn't exist back then. And I think now there's way more scrutiny in a good way on our staffs. Like there was something, I think 2 years ago, where it was like post a pic of your staff. And I think it got a lot of people really scared. And so I was so happy for my 2 shows to be like, great, let's take a photo, because you feel so proud of how diverse your staff is. But I think those kinds of things that terrify certain showrunners is good. Sometimes terror is not a bad thing.
It is. And it's funny because people say, oh, it's a financial incentive, and also it's, in a way, a type of vanity, like let's show how diverse our room is. But I like to think of it in a different sense, in that I think it's a creative incentive.
100%.
Because it's like you are getting voices that have not been heard, therefore are going to be more unique than the guy who was run like 30 shows.
And you have much more fresh perspective.
Yeah,
sure.
not because that person is not talented, but because we've seen his shows before. And so, I know a lot of guys, male directors, who are like, oh, it's a great time for women. I'm not getting as many jobs. And I'm like, well, you know what? It's a great time for men too, because you're finally getting to see stories that you've been robbed of when you were young because it was all by the same people. What a great time. It's like if you had fried chicken every day of your life, which is great, but then all of a sudden you get to try pizza. What's bad about that?
Nothing.
Even maybe you have a fried chicken restaurant, but you want to try pizza occasionally.
More pizza.
Yeah, I love pizza. Love fried chicken too. Don't get me wrong.
when your father left, your mother dropped you off at your grandparents' house and never came back. Is that true?
I mean, I thought that she was just taking a break, you know?
So both of our movies had female directors. And I think that made a huge difference
Huge
in Late
difference.
Night. Why don't you talk about what difference it was for Hustlers? Because Lorena actually wrote it too, right?
She wrote it,
Yeah.
and she worked several years on it, and really had a very clear vision of what she wanted to do. But it's funny, I was asked in a Q&A the other day, like, when you did your research going to strip clubs, did it change your mind about these girls? Did it like humanize them? And I was like, you know what? I've always humanized them because I'm a woman and I understand what being a woman is. What it did change for me going to these strip clubs was my perspective on the men who frequent them. Like I sort of understood their stories more because I don't live in that life. So, but that's also part of the reason why having a female director was so great. It's because she doesn't come from a place of like, oh, let's humanize this woman. She already does that. She already understands that. This is how she's going to frame her stories, how she's going to understand it. And it's within the context of something that you would think would have the male gaze, because it's about women who work in strip clubs.
Yeah.
It was
You could tell
amazing.
from the way that it was shot.
Yeah.
Again, having seen it as many times as I had, I remember thinking like there's nothing felt exploitative. But like as women, I love seeing beautiful women dance, but I also, just the way that it was shot there's nothing like prurient about it, which I thought was really refreshing. And it felt like just real. The conversations were real. There was like mundane moments, the anxieties, the way that women talk to each other.
Yeah.
I've seen that atmosphere in other movies, and as I'm sure you've been asked a million times, but I just found it just such a great adventure for women, and it felt like it was because it had a female helming it. And in Late Night, I felt there's a couple things when we hired Nisha Ganatra, who directed our movie. I felt that stories about women and ambition are really tricky because ambition is such a stereotypically masculine trait, and it's not it's not considered very attractive.
Very becoming on a
very
woman.
becoming. And this movie is about two women who are incredibly ambitious about their career.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to find someone who really had loving feelings towards ambition in women and thought of it as a beautiful thing. And so capturing that and not as something that, pitted us against each other. And Nisha is such a sensitive director. She did a lot of Transparent. She did my show, and she seemed like the perfect choice. And then on just like a producer standpoint, I feel like I can't come to these things and talk about how important it is that we have representation and then hire some white dude to direct my movie. So Late Night stars two women who are ambitious professionally. And I just felt like having a female director would make sure that the movie didn't position ambition as a negative quality.
Yeah.
Because that's, we're not, the movie's not about us finding men or anything else. And so the thing with Nisha was that she had worked on Transparent, she'd worked on my show. She's so good with actors. And I just felt like she was the perfect choice for this, for women from two different generations dealing with their professional careers. And I also felt that as a producer, I feel like I'm always asked at things like this about hiring women of color and gender parity. And I was actually in a position as one of the producers on the movie to hire someone who doesn't always get a shot at doing that. And so I thought, well, this is a time to put, to actually put it into action and do it. And so it was kind of a joy for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah.
And then with Nisha, she made sure that the movie was a movie that was, it was like over 50% women who were on the crew.
Amazing.
And that was great. So she kind of had the same ideas about what was important about, shooting the film going into it.
It makes it better. I mean, I remember there was this one time I was working on a project where it was a scene with a guy, and it's a scene where he did something bad to me, and I'm like angry at him. Mm-hmm. And the director kept trying to be like, can you just like soften it a little bit? Like, can you, and I'm like gonna follow direction. Like I trust the director, he wants his movie to be good. And so I did, like I made it like gentler, I made it like just a little bit more like, and then one of the producers, when he was like, great, got it, who was a woman, she came out and she was like, no. She's like, we don't got it. We need to, like, she's like, as a woman, I'm annoyed that she's just playing this like soft sweet when this thing happened that was like shitty. And so like, let her have some teeth, which was my initial like thing to be like, oh, like this is like annoying. And so I did it, and it felt more free. It felt more like human rather than like, let's soften this so it's the idea of a woman that is more palatable to an audience,
Right.
Or to 50% of an audience, right?
Well, yeah, and that's what's so nice about Hustlers is like the characters are doing, obviously criminal things, but it's like when you watch it, there's no like judgment about them. They're trying to get by. It's really like, I don't know, it's such a suspenseful movie.
Yeah.
And it, you know, the way that like, in, I don't know, The Talented Mr. Ripley, you're hoping he gets away with it, but he's a murderer. Like in this movie, I know that you're committing crimes, but I want all of you to be set free.
Yeah, because we're people. We're
and
not
you see it
ideas. And you know that people are flawed and they make mistakes, but they're trying their best in a system that hasn't really cared that much for them.
No, I've seen every episode of the show. I've read every book written about it. I do a little stand-up.
Where?
If you have a problem, ask the chemist. She'll always have the solution.
Which kills with people who know about chemistry.
Okay, so obviously when you see a movie like Hustlers, which has so many set pieces and looks like there's an incredible amount of rehearsal going into it, I want to know as an actor what you did to prepare, both in terms of research for the role and then also physically.
I mean, I definitely went to a lot of strip clubs and I took pole dancing lessons, but I was kind of lucky in that my character is supposed to be really new. Okay. Whereas like Jen's character, Ramona, is a seasoned veteran. Like she is fully formed and she's almost like, to me, almost like a unicorn, like perfect. Right. So she kind of, I felt like had to be perfect. And like my character wasn't, you know, sort of finding her way.
Right, she gets pulled under the fur coat.
Yes.
Like, yes, yeah.
And in the script, actually, that's written, that it says Ramona wraps Destiny in her fur coat. Destiny's feet stick out like a baby kangaroo.
Wow.
So it's literally mama and the baby kangaroo in the pocket. It's like, it's so cute. But like physically, there was a week, like 1 week where I was like, oh, I'm gonna like get a trainer and I'm gonna like look really fit. But then I realized I was like, that, if I did that, me doing that, it would be for my personal vanity. I wanna look good. Is this actually something that is enhancing my performance? And is it something that I think is true to the character who is struggling, who probably can't afford to eat a, you know, paleo, I didn't do paleo, but like, you know, organic food, get a trainer thing, who's just trying to get by. Yeah. Like, I think if I'm gonna do right by her, I think she wants me to more understand why she can't get a trainer, why she was put into this place, and like just understand the emotional life of her more than the physical. So that's sort of why I didn't really think about that much. Or, you know, maybe I was just lazy and I didn't want to get up early and train or something. But no, I mean, I really like every single time something has to do with my vanity, whether it's how I look or even my performance, even if I'm like, oh, I killed that scene. Yeah. It's crazy because when I get to in that area, I've noticed, this is gonna sound real actory, but like my instrument shuts down. Because I normally have, it's very easy for me to access emotions. And when I get too cocky, I guess, suddenly like my body won't let me access them. And I'm like, I don't understand. And I learned doing Hustlers, I was like, it's almost like my body and my heart is saying, fuck you, I'm not gonna let you use me for your own idolation. Like, I will let you use me in service of somebody else's voice. But it like, yeah, it's like when you're in acting class when you're 16 and you know you can cry, but then when you try to cry because you want to do a good job, it doesn't come because your body's like, this is not, you're not in the truth of the moment. You're just trying to get a pat on the back and it just shuts down. And so that's what I try to avoid, anything that is a type of vanity for the actor as opposed to the character. But then somebody like Jen, I mean, phenomenal work, what she did. And it was exactly what I needed to play my role great, because I needed to look at this woman and be like, this is everything I want to be.
Right, and that really came across in the film.
Yeah. And it was almost instant upon meeting her.
Yeah.
Like, we met on the day of the camera test, and I just really sort of fell in love with her. And she was a mystery to me in terms of like, how are you, you? And also,
As she
like,
is
so
with me,
cool.
yeah, she's a mystery too. I think that's so much what's appealing about her personally.
Yeah.
And then what the movie does so well, like twisting your persona of what she's like as someone who's so hugely famous, and then putting it into this role. Because it's, when you're watching it, it's so pleasing to have this incredibly glamorous public persona, and she's been famous for so long, play a smaller version of this for the characters in the movie. And then to have her like misbehave and things, it's like, it's really pleasing. Pleasing.
That's the name of the shoes that the strippers wear, the brand. They're called Pleasers.
Pleasers?
Yeah.
I will not be marginalized by the iron fist of white privilege that pervades this work environment.
I am not trying to silence your strong female Indian woman of color spirit. Hashtag Me Too, trans is beautiful, blah, blah, blah. You're still a new writer with no experience.
So you wrote both Late Night and you wrote for The Office. Did you feel a difference in writing for two different mediums like that?
Yeah, I think that I'd written for TV for so long, for I think at that point maybe like 13 years.
Wow.
And I had written, I don't know, many episodes of half-hour sitcom, which is its own really strict format. And I was exciting about writing something where you only have one shot. You don't have, multiple 23 episodes of The Office to do it. You have to just, and I thought that seemed like a really interesting challenge. And also, with this type of movie in particular, there's so many different kinds of writing. Like, there is obviously dialogue, which I'm used to writing from the different shows I've worked on, but then stand-up comedy. Then there is a late night talk show host doing their monologue, which is a different kind of joke writing. And then there was actual drama in it, which is something that I hadn't been able to write. So that was these challenges where I thought, well, I really would love to have those challenges, but no one is going to do it unless I actually decide to write this movie myself.
Right, because people be like, oh, can she do it? Because she's...
Right, and
which
and
is,
it's,
of course
and it's in those moments. I mean, now on TV, the line between drama and comedy is so blurred. You see them, but on my shows, they've always been these really like more traditional, like hard comedy shows. That was really great about writing a movie for Emma, who it would be wasting her to only have her do comedy in a movie when she has these heartbreaking chops in drama. So I thought that was kind of the reason to do Late Night.
And I think sometimes it's great to have both, like, that depth and the levity, because it's almost like I feel like laughter opens people up so that they can sort of receive, the punch.
No, absolutely.
But I wanted to ask you, had you ever done stand-up? Or how was that process, writing those types of jokes versus like The Office versus like a feature film screenplay? Like, it seems like three very different mediums.
No, it's a great question. It's a really fun question to answer too, because I love stand-up growing up. And if TV writers' rooms look white, like stand-up comedy is such a predominantly white thing. And so I actually became really interested in performing it after I was, friends with BJ Novak on The Office, who was he would do stand-up tours at colleges. And so I would just, as his friend, would go and watch him do stand-up. And there's something about that environment where if you're a comedy writer, it really gets you excited to try stand-up. And then he told me how much money he was getting paid to go to these different colleges to do stand-up for 20 minutes. And I was like, hey, I want to try it. So as you know, to use money as a reason, profit is not a great source of inspiration for art. So I was bad at it, really bad at it. But I had a lot of fun trying. Yeah. And since then, I mean, writing stand-up, writing punch-up jokes, like punch-up jokes for monologues, that is such a different, specific, and difficult job. That's why at most of these shows, the monologue writers are completely different. They're like, they don't work with the writers who write sketches. It's just it's a completely different skill set. So I learned a lot, and I really revere the people who can do that kind of thing.
What would you say you enjoyed the most, or what do you think is most intuitive to you of those three kind of formats?
Of those three, dialogue, always. I think because the thing about a monologue joke is it kind of doesn't matter who says it. You know, if you're lucky, it's someone like Stephen Colbert, but and just a person you've run the street, if it's a great joke, if it's a killer joke, and it's so pristine and perfect, almost anyone can say it and it will be funny.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's, first of all, such a difficult and amazing skill to have, but it also makes it a little bit less personal.
Yeah.
At least in my opinion, and it's just more social dialogue.
That's my favorite part of acting is the space between.
Yeah.
Like even with podcasts,
Yes.
I don't like podcasts where it's one person talking.
No,
even if
yeah.
they're talking about the most interesting thing. Like I want, like Two Dope Queens, that podcast.
Yeah.
Or anything where there is a back and forth because it's just like, I mean, we're social creatures. We connect and not knowing what the other person is gonna say.
Right.
I mean, that to me just feels
Well, and then also when you're acting, like I remember when I was acting with Emma, we could have, I'd lived with the script for so long, and then when I was performing it with her, it went from here, the script, to this, it was just like 10% of the experience of the film. Like being with her and the choices that she would make. You said you fell in love with Jen. I fully feel I fell in love with Emma.
Yeah,
over
and
the
it happens in this space. And
in
it's
this
like,
space, yeah.
I love that.
I mean, she's just was to watch her trying out new things each time and to be like, oh my God, just me and this, the 40 other people in this room will see every single time she did this and all the different flourishes she decided to do in this and didn't decide to do in the other take. And so that to me is, I don't know, I think that's why I transitioned from being a writer on the show to like a writer performer for most of the things I do.
Yeah.
But it's really magical.
So when I did Crazy Rich Asians, and they were looking for actors, it's crazy how many people said, well, there are no Asian actors. And what they really meant is like, oh, there aren't a lot of Asian American actors who are represented by the top three agencies and
yes.
have a huge resume.
Yes.
Why do you think they're not there? And so what John Chu, our director, did was he opened it up. He had people send in auditions via YouTube, and he watched every single one. He told them, like with a pint of Halo Top, he's like at 3 a.m., he's watching every single one. And there is so much talent out there. So it's not that there are no great Asian actors, it's that a lot of the people who are in this industry aren't trying hard enough, or they lack the imagination. And I feel like you kind of did a similar thing with your Netflix show that you're doing now, is you kind of opened it up. And like, what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, well, first of all, I loved Crazy Rich Asians, and you could really tell that there had been so much time and effort to finding people from all over the world to play the parts. And I love that it wasn't just, you grew up seeing like the 3 Asian actors that you've seen in movies before. It felt so researched, which I love. So for my new show on Netflix called Never Have I Ever, it's about a 15-year-old Indian American girl. And there's all these like very cultural specific things in it. She's Indian American, but her mother is Indian, and she's from South India, which is a different accent than if you're from North India. And her cousin is also South Indian, but has been in the country for less time. So there's all these things that I really wanted to get right.
It's great specificity for character too.
Right, but then also poses these challenges for casting. And so we started casting, and when you cast for high school, a lot of times for labor laws, you try to cast someone who's older so they can work a full day.
Yeah.
So we were meeting with basically, which is why a lot of these high school shows, when they're supposed to be 14, they look like older than you and I.
They're 18 because it's harder to...
Right, or they're 32 and they're playing 15. It's like, and it makes you feel less creepy about the fact that they're like having sex in high school, like all these other reasons. But anyway, for the purposes of this show, we started seeing these sort of like Bollywood gorgeous 27-year-old girls who were based in LA and New York to play this 15-year-old average Indian American girl from Sherman Oaks, California. Nothing glamorous about her. And slowly, as we started seeing these auditions, it started being like, well, I guess is she really glamorous with like perfectly straight hair? And then at a certain point, about 2 weeks into it, I just turned to my co-creator Lang and was like, this is really different than what we wrote.
Yeah.
This is like becoming just the commercial version of the thing that we wanted to do. And it's so hard when you're just trying to get something ready and you have a time limit to get it done. So I decided that the pool was too small for the people that we were seeing from the top 4 or 5 agencies. And I just posted on Twitter And on Instagram, with the help of Netflix and Universal, who is paying for the show, hey, if you are an Indian American girl from 15 to 22, and then for the mom and the older cousin, please write to this email. And then that's how we cast this young woman. So we found this young 17-year-old girl from Toronto who had no acting experience, and she's the star of my new show.
And it probably is going to have so much more humanity because it's a girl who sent in an audition tape and is a regular person in the world. And
she's authentic, which is, I think, something that was impossible to find the other way.
Yeah, that's what people respond to. They respond to real stories more than the commercial stuff.
I have to ask you, are you ever going to see Hustlers?
Probably not.
Probably not.
It's not that I don't watch all my projects.
Yeah.
It's a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
It depends on how I think it's gonna. If it's gonna help my work to watch something, I'll watch it. But if I think it's gonna just make me self-conscious about my work in the future and damage my work, then I don't. And I just think Destiny she's just in such a vulnerable, and she has such a huge arc. She changes from beginning to middle to end. Mm-hmm. I just feel like if I watch that too much, I'll get analytical, and then I'll get self-conscious, and then it'll affect my performance in the future, and I just can't. I know.
No, that is,
But I'm so glad people are enjoying it, and I had the best time doing it.